Ready when you are, sir.
Okay. Conversations with the Night Demon. Interior car day. The documentary opens with a filmmaker and journalist, Nathan Bone, driving down a desolate Illinois road. He passes a sign that says federal prison as his voiceover narration begins.
During the 80s and early 90s, one man struck terror into the heart of two cities.
Cutaway, footage of talking head interview with law enforcement interwoven with crime scene photos and 1980s news reports. Cutaway, 1980s news report clips. Montage.
We know we are dealing with the same person.
Another brutal slaying on the South Side today. So far, 10 women have become victims of an elusive murderer.
For more than a decade, Richard Hockney went on a killing spree, strangling to death 30 women in both Chicago and Detroit.
Cutaway, footage of Richard doing a perp walk with the police.
Leaving behind a trail of misery and broken lives, he bizarrely turned himself into the authorities and made a lengthy, bone-chilling confession. Interior
mugshot of Richard alongside audio of police interview.
I killed them all, pretty much.
Sentenced to life in prison. Without the possibility of parole, he has since been locked up in the federal penitentiary in Marion, Illinois.
Nathan, a lanky, nerdy-looking man, much like a documentary maker, Louis Theroux, arrives at the prison. Going through large security gates, he parks, gets out of the car, and looks upon the prison. It's an old, decrepit building surrounded by a large wall and barbed wire.
I'm filmmaker Nathan Bone, and I have been given exclusive access to Richard Hockney. I will ask him about his life and his crimes. I will delve into the mind of a serial killer, the mind of the Midwest Strangler.
Title sequence. The Bone Report presents Hockney, Conversations with the Midwest Strangler. Interior, prison reception day. Nathan is being searched by correctional officers before being greeted by the warden, a tough-looking, middle-aged woman. Nathan walks over and shakes her hand.
Hi, I'm Nathan.
We just met outside. Okay, I'm Jennifer Mazzone. I'm the warden here.
The warden proceeds to give Nathan a tour of the facility.
There are over 1,000 inmates incarcerated here in a number of different units and wings. We have the general population, control units, protective custody, and then of course the Parker unit.
Well, I believe Richard is housed in the Parker unit, is that
yes,
correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's where we house our more high-profile inmates, serial killers, terrorists, etc.
Why is it called the Parker unit?
It was named after Enoch Parker, who was the warden here at the time of the unit's opening.
They continue to walk through the corridor and talk.
I assume you've had some interaction with Hockney before. What's your impression of him?
Well, we haven't had many disciplinary problems with him as of late.
No, I mean, what's your opinion of him as a human being?
Well, look, I really don't give a if you don't mind me asking, what exactly are you looking to get out of your time with him?
A deeper understanding of the human condition? What is it that drives some of our darker inhibitions?
And you think that Richard Hockney is going to give that to you?
Hopefully, yes. What's so funny?
Oh, nothing.
They go through another security gate into another section of the prison. Interior prison corridor day. Nathan is being led to a canteen where he is to meet Richard. The corridor he is walking down is full of inmates eyeing him suspiciously.
As I walked through the prison, a sense of foreboding came over me. The atmosphere seemed to become more intense and claustrophobic as we neared our destination.
They go into the canteen where Richard is already glaring at them menacingly through his tinted glasses from across the room. As the crew gets closer, they see Richard. It's a slightly chubby, mustached man in his late 40s with dark hair that is receding. He is shackled and standing next to a large correctional officer. Cut to. Richard stares menacingly into the camera as it slowly zooms in on his face.
I had come face to face with a dark mind, the likes of which I had never met before, and I didn't know what to expect.
Richard breaks his stare to ask a question to the camera crew.
Do you guys think I should watch Stranger Things?
What?
I only get an hour of internet time a week, and I don't just want to waste it on porn, but then I don't want to just waste it on porn either. You understand what I'm getting at?
Stranger Things is definitely worth a watch. Should we get started?
Do you think I ought to do a half hour Stranger Things and a half hour porn? Like that? Is that what you think?
Nathan is bemused by Hockney's line of questioning and seems to contemplate on the idea for a second or two.
Yeah, sure, you could do that.
Hockney is about to relax back into the interview before he remembers something else he had read about Stranger Things.
Hang on, Stranger Things. That's got mostly kids in it, right?
Yes, most of the main cast is children.
Hockney ponders on this fact for a moment.
Would it be weird if I watched Stranger Things then jerk off right after?
Well, I assume you would have switched over to pornography?
I'll do it the other way around. I'll have half-hour porn first, get that out of the system, then I can enjoy watching Stranger Things.
Sounds like a plan.
Thanks for that, buddy. It's been weighing on me all week.
No problem. Glad I could help.
Shit, is it one of those hour-long shows?
Yes.
Hockney thinks about this further.
Whoa. This is a real Sophie's choice, huh?
Is it?
Fuck it, you know. Better the devil you know. I'm gonna watch porn.
Nathan looks at the camera puzzled. Richard Hockney, Talking Head, Day.
You've been locked up for almost 3 decades now. Have you reflected on your life and how you ended up here in that time?
Well, I don't wonder how too much because I know for a fact I murdered women during most of the 1980s. However, since I've been locked up, I've become an avid user of heroin. I love this stuff. If I'm honest, I don't think I would have strangled all those prostitutes if I was at home shooting up on the couch, you know? They should probably legalize that stuff. Save lives.
You believe that heroin would have replaced your homicidal urges?
Yeah. Well, maybe not the first girl. That probably would have happened anyway. And the second one, more than likely, would have gone down too. Perhaps the third girl. All I'm saying is that the heroin would have halved my numbers at the very least.
Interior, Parker Unit, Day, later. The camera crew is following Hockney through the Parker Unit as he gives them a tour.
Hockney took us on a tour of the Parker Unit where he had been held for the past decade. It houses some of the country's most notorious and violent murderers.
They are in a cell block with a communal area on the ground floor. Inmates are sitting at tables playing cards and dominoes.
So this is the sort of hangout spot. It's where we socialize and do various activities with all the classics. Game of Life, Scrabble. We recently got a Twilight-themed Monopoly set. I didn't know what the fuck that was, so I watched the movie. Love it.
Really?
Yeah, Team Edward all the way. Him and the girl are actually together in real life, too.
I believe they broke up, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry, what?
They split up.
Hockney is taken aback by this news and tries not to be visibly upset.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Are you okay?
I'm good. Was it, at least an amicable breakup?
I think she might have been seeing someone else or something.
Fucking whores ruin everything! Sorry, that was... You want to see my cell?
Interior, Richard prison cell, Day. Richard is showing Nathan around his cell. Nathan notices a massive stack of letters on a small table.
There's a lot of correspondence you have there.
My fan mail.
You have fan mail.
It's mostly from broads.
When you say fan mail, are the contents of these letters mostly of a positive nature towards you?
Oh yeah, it's almost always sexually. A whole lot of, I want you inside of me. I want your seed inside of me. Stick it in my ass, Richard. All sorts of fun stuff. I don't read the letters anymore. The pics are cool though.
Pictures.
Yeah, I got a whole album.
Richard reaches over to a shelf and picks up a scrapbook, opening it to a random page that contains various explicit photos of women in provocative positions.
What do you think of that? It can get a little repetitive after a while, but I do like the ones where they bend over and get the camera like this.
He bends over his bed and sticks his hand between his legs and demonstrates how his groupies would take the ideal picture.
Like that. A real tight shot to get the whole thing.
I got it. You mind if I open one?
You want to guess, buddy?
Nathan picks up a letter at random from the stack and reads it aloud.
Dear Richard, I have loved you since the day I saw you on Dateline when they walked you into the courthouse for your arraignment. Where the world saw a monster being paraded in front of the parasites and mobs of hate mongers, I saw a scared young boy who just needed someone to take care of him in a cold and lonely world. I want to take care of that young boy, tell him everything's going to be okay. This sounds kind of nice.
Keep on reading, buddy.
I want to take that young boy's penis and stick it up.
Always takes a turn.
A photo of Richard with a swastika tattoo on his back, which is stuck on the wall, catches Nathan's eye.
Is that what I think it is?
That's when I first got here in my Aryan Brotherhood days. Don't get me wrong, I'm no racist. It's just that it's hard making friends and I just wanted to fit in, you know?
Are you still a member?
Oh, no, they kicked me out after they found out I was half Greek. It was for the best, anyway. It was always race war this and shit skin that, a lot of smuggling things up assholes.
I would have not thought a prison gang, even an Aryan one, would be so nitpicky.
Bunch of fucking nerds. I don't discriminate myself. In fact, I'm in a minority of serial killers who murdered outside of their race.
What's your point?
You know, black, white, fat, skinny, didn't matter to me. You ever tried strangling a large black prostitute? They're quite combative.
Interior Parker Unit shower room day. Hockney is showing Nathan the shower room, a mostly open area with a few toilet cubicles.
This is where the magic happens. I'm kidding. Despite popular belief, most prison rapes actually happen in hallways and corridors. Much like the one you guys have to walk down in order to get to the unit. If you notice, the guards are pretty sparse there, and 4 or 5 inmates could easily drag you into the broom closet and have at least 2 minutes alone with you. If it goes past 2 minutes, no one comes to help, you should probably just let it be. You know, ease into it, if you get my drift.
At that moment, a figure emerges out of thin air from one of the cubicles behind Richard. It's John Fitzgerald, a fellow serial killer who Richard is friends with.
Richie!
Oh, here's trouble.
John, a slightly older-looking man with a Charles Manson-type appearance and country accent, greets him joyously.
Wow, we did not even notice that cubicle was in use. You were very quiet.
John's my best bud.
Ride or die, bitch. Know what I'm saying?
They begin to playfully shadow box with each other.
It was almost endearing to see the way Richard and John interacted with one another, almost like schoolboys in a playground.
John jokingly punches Richard on the arm.
This image is then drowned out by the weight of both men's crimes. John Fitzgerald, also known as the Highway Killer, spent the 1970s kidnapping, raping, and murdering young men, many of whom were hitchhikers he had picked up along the freeways of California. Originally sentenced to death, changes in the law saw his sentence commuted in the early 90s to life without parole.
Cutaway, footage of a body in a ditch on the side of a highway with face blurred out. Richard Hockney, talking head, day.
John and me do everything together, watch each other's backs.
I'm surprised that in a masculine environment such as prison, you would be comfortable being so openly friendly with a gay man.
Let's not denigrate the gay community here. The guy has his issues, I don't pry, man.
John Fitzgerald, talking head, day.
There was a lack of Jesus in my life, and that lack of Jesus led me to having impure thoughts and indulging in sins of the flesh. It led me down a dark path in the wilderness of various highways in California, and truck stops, restrooms, maybe 1 or 2 bathhouses, and pornographic theaters, maybe. I don't know, I don't remember.
Cut 2, Richard Hockney, talking head, day.
He's a good guy, you know, just has the reasoning and morality of a priest on a camping trip with retarded kids, but it's perfect, right? You guys like that?
Like what?
Did a little Catholic church bit for you there? I can do that throughout this if you want.
John Fitzgerald, talking head, day.
Those young men were not victims of John Fitzgerald. They were victims of Satan. That doesn't matter now because I cast Satan out a long time ago. Now I am pure of heart and clean of thought.
Richard Hockney, talking head, day.
Yeah, he's raped a ton of guys in here. He's actually famous for it. Rape prices of 95 and 96. All him, brother.
Shouldn't they have perhaps moved him into solitary confinement?
Raped someone in there too, but don't ask me how. Yeah. Until they built the Parker unit, they were just shifting his ass around the prison like they were the archdiocese.
You keep making references to the church, Richard. Is there a reason for that?
Dude, don't sweat it. Your audience loves this kind of shit.
How would you know that?
Come on. They're a bunch of nerdy atheists, right? Don't get me wrong. I don't believe in God either. It's just that I did cool shit, like drugs, flew loads everywhere, and listened to Sabbath. You did a lot of learning so you could rub logic in some holy roller's face, right?
Well, no, I did other things.
Me and you are playing the same game here, bro. I got you on this.
Nathan is at first insulted, but then begins stroking his chin and eyeing Richard suspiciously, thinking Richard is trying to get in his head.
Yeah, we are playing games, aren't we, Richard?
Nathan continues stroking his chin. Hockney becomes uncomfortable and annoyed by this.
Yeah. I know, that's what I just said. Stop looking at me like that.
Interior, Nathan's office night. Nathan is studying a cluttering of police files and maps and photos on a desk.
After Richard's attempt to get into my head by accurately describing my life, I decided it was best to arm myself with more forensic knowledge of his crimes and confessions.
Nathan is watching old interrogation footage. It's of Hockney being aggressively questioned.
Is that why you left dog shit on the body? To humiliate her, you son of a bitch?
I didn't touch any dog shit, man. I mean, I dumped her in the alley. If she got dog shit on her, I don't know what to tell you.
Cut the shit, Hockney!
Richard is visibly startled and oddly excited by this.
Whoa, guys, take it easy now.
The agent grabs Hockney by the collar and brings him face to face.
Stop playing games, you sick fucker!
I'm not gonna lie. I am both enjoying and, if I'm being honest, aroused by the intensity you bring to the table right now. I don't care who knows it!
Nathan is looking at photos of Richard's first victim.
His first victim, Jeanette Wilkins, was manually strangled. The rest of his victims he murdered with piano wire. What I was seeing in these photos and on these pages was a blossoming killer, experimenting. He went out that night on the hunt, but realized how difficult it was to strangle someone with his bare hands. So, like any organized, sophisticated killer, he evolved.
Richard Hockney, Talking Head Day.
Basically, I picked Wilkins up from the usual hoe stroll, drove down an alley, had sex. I go to pay her. My wallet's not in my fucking pocket. She starts losing her shit. I'm trying to calm her down. Next thing I know, she takes a swing at me, and her neck, for whatever reason, is the only thing I can grab. And whilst I'm doing it, it's like I'm really into it. I couldn't stop. After it's done, I sit back in my seat and I feel something underneath my foot. It was my fucking wallet. It fell on the floor, you believe that? Anyway, I went home, jerked off, so I guess that's what set that situation off.
So, if you had found your wallet or tie, Jeanette Wilkins would still be alive and you wouldn't be here today.
Pretty much. To be fair, they usually ask for the money up front. So it's kind of on her, if you think about it.
Interior, Nathan's office night. Nathan is looking at the only letter and puzzle that Richard had mailed to the journalist, taunting law enforcement.
This was the anagram he had mailed to the editor of the Chicago Times. This passed through the hands of some of the smartest people in the country, and still to this day, no one has been able to solve it.
Nathan reads it aloud. On the paper is some crude writing and a jumble of letters that are supposed to be some sort of puzzle.
Dear editor, behold, I am the Midwest Strangler, the one you have been hunting with such vigor. I have so far murdered 5 women, both in Chicago and Detroit, and yet I still elude you. I am both there, yet not there. I am a ghost, yet still of flesh and blood. You will never catch me due to the complex evasive measures I have taken to avoid detection. However, I will throw you a bone. If you wish to catch me, the anagram below will reveal everything needed to accomplish this. Yours truly, the Midwest Strangler.
Interior, prison library, daytime. Nathan is showing Richard a copy of his letter.
What do you got there?
This is the anagram you sent to the Chicago Sun-Times. I guess at a stretch I can see your initials, perhaps a bit of your address in the puzzle.
Really?
You said that like you're surprised.
Did I?
What is it?
The introductory paragraph from Dear Editor to Yours Truly is very much accurate and relevant. Well, the bit about being a ghost and complex evasive measures is a little embellished. I wasn't killing the president every week. I just drove away most of the time.
The anagram.
Oh yeah. I started the anagram, but it looks a lot harder, but it's a lot harder than it looks. Basically, I can't do anagrams or codes. I ended up with a page full of random letters and bullshit, and I passed out at some point.
You passed out.
I was drinking pretty heavily back then. I'm pretty certain I had taken down 2 6-packs and half a bottle of vodka.
So this isn't an anagram then? There's no puzzle on this page that could have helped capture you or reveal your identity?
Pal, I barely graduated high school. I saw some other guys that done stuff like that in the past, leave messages and shit for the police and the newspapers. Yeah, I figured, hey, that looks fun. Except it wasn't, it was pretty fucking boring.
You are aware of the amount of time and resources that one letter costs. At any one time, hundreds of people were trying to decode something for over a decade that you're now saying you scribbled in a drunken stupor. It means nothing.
Okay, in my defense, I have no defense. I mean, I almost left a return address on the fucking envelope.
Nathan sits there in shock and disappointment for a moment. Desperately, he then takes another long shot in the dark at Hockney.
What about the condoms?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, they found used condoms stuck in the digestive tracts and rectums of some of the victims. Was that some sort of signature?
Hockney is surprised and shocked that Nathan would share this rather unpleasant personal information about the victims and their lifestyles on camera.
Man, I actually didn't know that. I didn't leave condoms in their assholes or anything for your information. But they were hookers. Like junky street hookers. I don't have to explain this to you, right?
No, of course not. We can cut that out.
You probably should. I mean, I know I killed them, but you don't have to let the whole world know about their lack of personal hygiene. Let's show some respect, dude.
Exterior prison computer room day. Nathan is observing Richard at the computer during his internet time. He is searching for porn.
Latina squirters. Go for something a little ethnic this week.
I was starting to think that Richard was not playing games and that I may have overestimated what there is to be learned from someone like him.
You guys want to give me some space? You can stay in the room, just don't get in my eye line. But if you do get in my eye line, don't move, because that's just going to put me off even more.
Nathan is walking out of the room, leaving Richard masturbating furiously at the computer.
Although Richard is fully aware and very matter-of-fact about his crimes, he seemed oblivious as to why he committed them. My conversations with him seemed to be going nowhere. Nonetheless, I felt that perhaps bringing up some uncomfortable memories would maybe garner some deeper answers.
Interior prison rec room day. Richard is sitting at a table opening new fan mail and gluing the nude pictures into his scrapbook.
In doing my research in preparation for this film, I found out some interesting things about your childhood.
Yeah.
Your mother was arrested numerous times for drug possession and prostitution.
Richard looks up at Nathan momentarily, but then continues sticking in pictures.
Yeah, that's right.
She was also physically abusive towards you as well.
She didn't spare the rod. Whatever she had in her hand that wasn't a Miller Lite, oh, she threw that at me too.
I also read a social services report that says she was suspected of having choked you on several occasions.
Yeah, I don't really remember.
Well, it just appears to me that you seem to have engaged in the same type of behavior in one way or another as your mother.
Are you saying I wanted to fuck my mom or something?
What? No, not necessarily. I was just wondering whether there might be some correlation between the events of your childhood and your crimes.
How do you figure?
Well, your mother was an abusive sex worker, and then you happen to mostly murder sex workers.
Whoa. What was that you just said?
I was just saying that if you felt your mother being a sex worker...
That sex work?
Sex worker?
Yeah. What's that about? Is that what they call hookers now?
Well, it's just a preferred term now. Hookers and prostitute have a lot of negative connotation.
You don't even use the word term prostitute. I mean, I understand not saying whore.
Some labels have a way of devaluing people's lives in the eyes of the public.
That's true. I don't think I got any national media attention until I was 5 bodies deep. It was pretty pitiful.
And we also have to respect that it is a profession.
Obviously a very dangerous one.
Right.
Richard picks up another letter and opens it. He takes out a lock of hair along with the attached letter.
This is a weird one. Dear Richard, I hope I find you in good health and spirit. Ugh, boring.
He tosses the letter toward Nathan, who picks it up and begins to read it. Richard starts playing and rubbing the hair between his fingers.
Dear Richard, I hope I find you in good health and spirit. I am an admirer of your work in your war against the sinful horrors of Chicago and Detroit. In fact, I consider myself a student in many ways. Most recently, I've been putting many of your lessons into practice and have declared my own war on future sin and wickedness. If you have been watching the news recently, you would have seen the aftermath of my crusade in Montana. They call me a baby killer and monster, but they don't see the bigger picture of what people like you and I are trying to achieve. You rid the world of whores, I'm ridding the world of future whores. I get them before they turn into bitches. I hope you appreciate the gift I have sent you. It is from my latest project, a 10-year-old. Pretty young thing, shame she would have gone on to use her to seductive ways to destroy man.
Richard, in the middle of sniffing the hair, throws it on the floor in disgust, realizing where it came from. Holy fuck!
Well, that's not sexy at all. I can't stick hair in a scrapbook, right?
2 police officers are putting both the letter and hair into evidence bags, whilst Richard lies handcuffed on the floor. Cutaway, news report on Montana serial killer.
Another shocking murder here in the Treasure State. 10-year-old Emily Dixon disappeared Friday evening whilst walking home from school. Today it is believed police have found her body in Woodland, almost 5 miles from where she lives. Inside sources have revealed that the crime bears all the hallmarks of the elusive killer that has been terrorizing the state for months.
The person that the national media had dubbed the Angel Slayer had somehow managed to find his way into our story. Having murdered 2 young girls already, he struck again, kidnapping and strangling a 10-year-old to death. In a bizarre twist of fate, he had decided to share the exploits of this crime with Richard. After the FBI collected the letter for analysis, Richard was put in solitary confinement while they searched his cell and to stop him from communicating with the outside world or the Angel Slayer himself.
Interior, control unit day. Nathan is standing outside Richard's isolation cell, which is open except for a barred gate.
Why do you think the Angel Slayer decided to reach out to you specifically?
They're calling him the Angel Slayer.
Yes.
That's a cool name. You know, I never liked the name they gave me.
The Midwest Strangler?
It sucks. He murders women in Illinois and Michigan areas. Let's give him a name. The Midwest Strangler? Great, that's that. Let's move on to Joe's fucking leaving party. They put no effort into it. I put a lot of effort into my side of things.
Well, what would you have preferred they called you?
The Night Demon.
What was that?
The Night Demon?
Everyone goes silent.
I won't lie to you. I do not hate that name.
Really?
It has a very heavy metal feel to it.
That's what I was going for.
It's interesting you brought this up. Is having some type of ongoing lore or mythology surrounding yourself and your crimes important to you?
Yeah, I guess. You get all that attention for being arrested and the trial, and nothing. So you get to pipe up once in a while, keep folks interested.
Yeah. Well, over the years, you've confessed to other murders on top of the ones you were convicted of. Why not just tell the authorities about these when you initially handed yourself in?
My dear, sweet Nathan, there's a lot you have to learn. You don't give up all the goods at once, Nathan. You gotta remember, I got the rest of my life in here. It's like, maybe you show some side boob one time, and then you leave it a year or two, then you show a little nipple or bush.
Seems like some sort of sick game.
They tried to send an undercover cop in here to get information from me about the other murders. Yeah, I had no idea. I liked the guy. I think we became buddies almost. I told him about my life. He told me about his, I presume. Probably would have spilled the beans. Truth be told, became like a brother to me.
What happened to him?
John raped him.
Why? Did John find out he was a police officer?
No.
You also tried to confess to the murder of John Benet Ramsey.
Everyone was trying to get out on that. Even Manson tried to confess to it, and that motherfucker's been on lockdowns in 71.
Interior, Parker Unit Day, cutaway of daily prison life for the rest of the inmates, leading back into the Parker Unit. Serial killer John Fitzgerald is introducing Nathan to some of the other inmates.
While Richard was in solitary, we went back to the Parker Unit. It represented a broad and fascinating spectrum of American crime. John Fitzgerald had offered to introduce me to some of the other inmates.
You talked to a black yet?
No, I haven't, John.
They walk towards a large black man sitting alone at a table playing with some dominoes. He's wearing a dashiki and skull cap.
Hey, Mr. X. How you doing today?
And fuck you, cracker!
This man's name is Edward Duro, or as he prefers to be called, Mufasa X. During the 1970s, Duro had joined a black nationalist cult. He He and other members would go on to commit a rash of brutal, racially motivated killings and assaults. After being captured, Mufasa was eventually convicted of his involvement in 4 murders and was sentenced to life.
Talking Head, Mufasa X, daytime. Mufasa is in the middle of a rant about a government conspiracy involving turning black children into homosexuals. You see, what they doing is they putting fluoride in black water supply to turn our children gay, which will lead to babies not being born into the community, bringing about the extinction of the black man.
Right. Yeah, I don't know much about how public utilities work, but I'm fairly certain there isn't such a thing as a specific black people's water supply.
Yeah, look, all this is outlined in my autobiography, Diary of the Vanguard, a true account of the soldier in the race war. He lifts the book out of nowhere into frame. The front cover is him staring wistfully out of a barred window.
You see yourself as a soldier and your victims as enemy combatants.
Nah. They were all white supremacists and oppressors of the black man.
You're saying that the homeless man you and your associates beat and shot repeatedly was an oppressor and white supremacist?
Yes.
What about the woman you gang raped in the back of a van and then decapitated?
Who sent you here, man?
I'm sorry?
Did Co-Intel Pro sent you? They sent you, huh? Bring down another righteous brother just like they did Malcolm and Cosby. Mufasa X rips off his microphone and storms out of frame. End of selection.
So Dell's watching through one of these 2 cameras, or he will be anyway. So we'll pretend that he's sitting here. So do you want to go first on what you would
Yeah,
say?
sure. You mentioned before we got started outside that Dell's in England
Yes.
and Great Britain and was concerned about it sounding American. I nailed that for sure.
He's never been here. He said.
Yeah, it's
So he was asking.
it was wonderfully specific, I think. It was a lot of fun. I mean, such a cool, weird tone, obviously well written, really funny, really great performances. I mean, both performances tonight have been really extraordinary, and very funny, kind of playing with familiar tropes. I thought the device of the documentary was really interesting. What I was wondering is kind of a simple thing of like, kind of what's the story? Like, you read the whole script, right?
No,
okay.
I only read the 30 pages.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting relationship and funny, quirky, dark exploration of these characters. I'm just wondering what the story is like. Where do we go from here? So I would have asked him the same thing I asked Aaron, is like kind of what happens next. I got the hint that the Montana killer might be kind of where the story kicks in. And if so, maybe there's a way to like tease that up earlier a little bit. I think the fact that there's another killer operating, and you maybe get little teases about that, and then as we see in these pages, that story kind of comes accruing into this one. I really like that. But I was just really curious, kind of where are we going? Like, is it a relationship about these 2 men? I'm not quite sure where we're, I'm not quite sure where we're going, because it is kind of very. No, I think it's really funny and watchable. It's a little cut and dry, and the documentary device is interesting, but it has the effect of kind of separating you from the subject a little bit. It's a little bit of a mediating factor. So I would just be very curious to sort of see how the rest of the script unfolds. Where does the story go? How does it evolve? Does something happen with the relationship with these 2 men? But it was clearly really entertaining, and I would be curious to see where we go from here.
Full disclosure, Dell has entered our competition before and in earlier drafts.
Oh, okay.
And what's fun about what I do is I get to sort of give a bit of a look at the progression, and especially when they follow what I suggest. And Dell's not here, so I can be like, I told him everything. But what in the earlier drafts and what was really pleasing to see in this one, but still kind of pokes its head in, is that it felt like it was between Nathan and Hockney, like it was their movie.
Yeah.
And then it kept veering off into other characters in the prison. So at one point it was like, is this a movie just about him visiting the prison, or is it about these 2? It seems to be focusing in on these 2 now. And I really think, I agree with you, I think the outside murderer, like it was almost like maybe that's the reason why Nathan's in there now.
Oh, maybe.
Like that would be my pitch, sorry to do that to you, Del. But but you know, like, so Nathan sort of sets it up like, I'm here not just to get inside the mind of the serial killer, but I need to get inside the mind of the serial killer because it's going to help
Right.
solve another series of murders from a guy who is clearly connecting to Hockney. And so I think you could still have some of that, and then you can get into the fact that Hockney's useless,
Right.
and hilariously so. And then then you can sort of snuffle around, but then at least maybe there's something, because I agree. There's that initial gag where it's like super serious, and then you get in there and it's like, okay, this is a fucking train wreck. And then where do you go from there? Like,
Right.
when does the movie break out?
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Because the risk is it could be like just a 15-minute short film, where it's like, here is my documentary, and he could be a student filmmaker, and he goes in there, it's horrible, he breaks down, and then he walks out like that was a disaster, and we all laugh, and it's fun. So if you want to make it into a full feature, there needs to be some, like you said, some engine, I think, that's lacking. And for me personally, I think the thing comes alive, even on the page. I mean, it was brilliantly done by Peter and Ari, but when those two are talking, that's when the thing was really flying off the page. Whenever anybody else came in, although I did like John the Rapist.
Yes.
The other thing I really liked about this, and I wanted to see how it played in an audience, is that I just really liked that you're like, should I be laughing at this? It's like, he's talking about decapitating and hookers and all this horrible stuff. Should I be offended by this? But so, and I think Dell does a great job of kind of walking that line and staying there. Like it gets slightly sad and tragic, but it never gets too far where we're like, okay, this is straight out offensive. But nor does it get too trivial, where it's like, we are talking to serial killers. So that's what impressed me about it too.
I definitely agree. I find that very impressive. And it's a really tricky tone, like just pitch black comedy. Like, that's really hard to do. So all respect to Del for doing that so successfully. And you can tell from the audience reaction that we were with him in this like very dark but still very funny story.
Yeah, which is really hard to. It really is hard to do.
It's really hard to do. It's very impressive.
Because you want to be. Sometimes you can be shocking for shocking's sake. It's just like, I'm just going to throw in shocking things, but there was a real humanity to both of them.
Yes.
They seemed like people.
Yes, absolutely.
And there were layers in there, and it was nicely done. So I think he did a really good job of that. So so the feedback from us for the next draft would be to really wrap it around the story.
Yeah, and again, this might have unfolded later in the script. To that end, also, I feel like I knew Nathan the least of kind of all the characters, and I want to kind of understand a little bit more of where he's coming from, and not that because it is clearly it's got a strong comic vein. It may not be a big emotional journey of a movie, but still kind of want to understand who this young guy was and what he wanted and what he hoped to get. Is it a seduction story? Is it some investigative thing? Is he pursuing something else? It reminded me of sort of Coen Brothers movies, as well as the American Vandal series on Netflix, which is hilarious. But all those characters, they have some emotional journey that they go on through. It's screenwriting 101. Like, what's the emotional journey for the character? And it can be kind of light and funny, or dark, or twisted. But he's got to start at one place and end in a different place, and I wasn't quite seeing that yet.
Right, and then there absolutely needs to be. It does beg the question, why is a relatively young filmmaker going into this prison and taking on this particular story? It does seem like there's an opportunity for his own backstory to sort of bleed into the reasoning. Yeah, I kept flashing on Spinal Tap. Because Spinal Tap halfway through, you're like, what the fuck am I watching here? It's like, because they're just sort of meandering around, going from tragedy to tragedy. And
that's a great example. I mean, there are a lot of that movie's brilliant, hilarious vignettes. But it's the relationship between the two main guys, and they go through all the stuff together, and they split up, and they have the kind of heartwarming reunion at the end. I mean, you don't need much more than that, but you do need that.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yep, I agree. So well done, Del. Feedback from you guys. If you just yell so he can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. This might just be because of the making a murderer and serial and all of the sort of documentary things about murderers, all the true crimes that we have, that there were a few things that I thought were hinting that the killer character was not the real killer, just because it was like he turned himself in and confessed, And then there kept being a few things where it seemed like he didn't necessarily know the details of his own crime. And that, again, is because of the type of shows that it's mimicking, but that was just something that I found myself half expecting to have happen at like page 29. So that was just something that stuck out to me.
Yeah, that'd taken a whole other direction. Vicky?
Yeah, even reading it when I had it at home, I was thinking the same thing, is what's Nathan's purpose? Like, is he trying to make a career for himself, or is he been badmouthed and blackmailed, or doing something, or that he wants, like, it's just, he seems a little too vague. So
Yeah.
I'd like to see him develop a little bit more.
He clearly thinks this is going to make him into a serious journalist at some level, but then it goes fairly pear-shaped once he gets in there, unfortunately. Whit?
I really like some of the things that parallel reality, which is that whenever serial killers are in prison, they always get tons of female fan mail. Women offering to marry them. This is all documented fact. It's crazy stuff. And I wonder a couple of things. One is we keep cutting away to these news reports. And I wonder if we could be seeing these as part of the documentary in the prison commissary, that there's reports about a new serial killer out there. And then, I'm drawing a parallel here, let me clarify this. He talks about getting these letters from women and that they're all kind of the same. And do you ever get letters from men? What kind of men do you get letters from? Wannabes. People who talk a lot and they say that they're doing things, but they're full of shit. They're like the people on the internet. Right. You know what I mean? And then finally, when that hair comes out of that letter, it's like, oh fuck, this is a real one. I don't know, just something, something.
No, I was thinking of ways that Nathan could get drawn in there somewhere. Like he was crucial to that. Like it involved him in some way.
Yeah,
That's what I kept wondering. I kept hoping that it was like the two of them have to kind of go on this. Now they go on this sort of weird journey together, which is completely messed up.
It's got a little bit of a Silence of the Lambs kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
How many times has that been pitched? It's Spinal Tap meets Silence of the Lambs. Not that again.
Try to be original.
Yeah. Anyone else? So,
yeah, I'm going to trickle down on the previous comments where we need to know what Nathan wants, because this does have the classic setup of the manipulation. So Nathan's probably got to want something that Hockney doesn't want to give him, and maybe then Hockney kind of maneuvers him in a way that he doesn't really either understand, know is happening, or something that clearly makes him comfortable, because right now we don't really have conflict. He marches into the prison, he's basically getting what he wants, there's no struggle.
Right, unless there's some connection between Nathan and one of the girls that was murdered. Like that would be a nice evolution as well, right?
Sorry, had you finished?
Yeah, that was
Yeah, okay, cool. We got time for a couple more. Timmy.
Mine is sort of the opposite. I kind of want to know what was your character called?
Hockney.
Why has he agreed to do this documentary, and sort of what is his opinion of this male serial killer if they do go down the line together in doing something with that?
Yep. I'm assuming that he wanted the press and he just decided it was time for more, but I think that could be played up more. Agreed. Yeah. All right, we have one more. Oh, I haven't looked over here. Yes.
Well, I kind of have a question to pose to maybe everybody. I've heard a few people say that they need to know what Nathan wants, but as I was listening to it, once they got the letter with the hair in it, that's to me when I started to be like, okay, I know what the story is going to be. I could see a bunch of possibilities of where it's going to go.
Right.
And I was like, I don't necessarily need to know, because one of the possibilities to me was that maybe Nathan was a serial killer, interviewing serial killers about what they did. Or, like you said, it was a little bit of Silence of the Lambs. So I was like, maybe I don't need to know right away what Nathan wants, as long as the story keeps moving. Because once that happened, I was like, okay, it's starting to go somewhere.
Right, that's why when we moved to Mufasa, as funny as he is, it was like, it felt like a distraction. Like, it's like, while he's in solitary confinement, I talk to other people, it's like, no, we should be into something now. By now, keep going down the track, don't veer off. And it felt like, let's just look at the flowers in here. It's like, no, keep telling me the story. That was my concern.
And I felt like it may have been intentional, that he didn't we don't necessarily know so much about Nathan.
Could be. We'll never know. Well, I might, because I can email him, but you won't. All right, we have time for one more, and then we'll do the Q.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, first of all, Dell, he's fantastic, he's hilarious. Comedy's,
Yeah, he's got a dark mind.
I love our comedy from the junkie, nailed it. But I was curious if you knew from him if he's always seen this solely as a feature, as far as
I believe so far.
Because I, like, just reading or listening to it, I was also thinking of American Vandal, and just like, you know, Making Murder, all those, how they end up being kind of these shorter stuff. You can condense into like a shorter series. I would see it working really well in a format like that, where he could get into some of these things.
Could almost be like a documentary now.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
It's
with-
hilarious.
where he rips off. Have you seen that on IFC where they Bill Hader and
Fred Armisen.
yes, Fred Armisen each week do a different documentary. They rip off a different documentary style and then satirize it. And they're on to like season 3 now.
Yeah, it's kind of a deep cut.
Yes.
documentaries, but it's
Yeah.
very funny. It's not unlike this.
Right. So each week you could be getting into the mind of someone else and having it go wrong.
I can also see it being a fictional podcast, which is a way to get some of the news reports and kind of play with audio. The two performances. It also could be a stage play, because obviously plays great in front of an audience.
That's true.
There's a way to do it where it's just it's a very intense stage piece.
That's very true. Very true. All right. Did I say one more? Oh. If you can both do it. All
Two
right.
separate references, which was Mindhunter and
Yes.
What We Do in the Shadows.
Right.
And for me, I feel like if we have the structure of mockumentary, I want to lean more into that. I mean, like, sure, we need Nathan's like storyline and all that, but we had that one moment where he was like, "Oh, we can cut this out." I wanted more of that.
Yes.
Almost like
Yes.
we're gonna have that like raw like structure of like this is the stuff we're seeing that's maybe behind the scenes. Like that's a useful tool as a writer, I feel like, to lean into. So
Yeah.
that's all I had to say for him.
Yep.
I was just going to say that I think it's interesting that on the pages, so much of it is voiceover, and that I wonder if the audience is like, well, what about that dude sitting in the middle of everybody? Whereas if you were watching it and you were just hearing the voice, you may not care as much, like script wise, it may develop in the right time because we're not seeing him as much. And he has, I don't know, I just do the research on the script, he develops in how much we see Nathan. And at first, it's not very much at all. And I don't know, just to point out, because...
No, I know. And it was a funny line where Hockney, when Nathan said after he accurately described my life. So, all right, well, let's congratulate Del. Well done.